Sorry, hold on one second. Yeah, and I've got more here if anybody wants. All right, good afternoon. In a moment, we will be joined by College Football Playoff Selection Chair Rob Mullens, along with College Football Playoff Executive Director Bill Hancock. Rob will make opening statements, and we will then turn it over for questions. A couple of housekeeping items, as I mentioned. Please turn your phones to silent. ASAP is on the line transcribing, and we will also be joined by media members on the phone who will have an opportunity to ask questions. At this time, please welcome Rob Mullens and Bill Hancock.
Thanks, Gina. Good afternoon, everyone. The committee spent Friday night and all day Saturday watching the conference championship games together. At 11 last night, the committee met to rank the 25 teams in college football. As you know, the committee ranked Alabama number 1, Clemson number 2, Notre Dame number 3, and Oklahoma number 4. Let me take you inside the room. There was little debate about Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame. There was a lot of debate about Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State. The debate was deep, detailed, and occasionally contentious. There was division. I can report to you that different people in the room made a case for a variety of different outcomes. I don't think we left any combination off the field. Some committee members believed Georgia should be number 4. Some believed Ohio State should be number 4. Some believed Ohio State should be number 5. Boy, did we debate it. As we considered 3 teams for the number 4 slot, the committee did not believe that any one team was unequivocally better than the next. That meant we went to our protocol. The protocol are guidelines given to the committee by the commissioners when they created the playoff. It's our rules of the road. It includes a variety of factors that we use to judge teams. No one factor is more important than another, and this year, the difference among 4, 5, and 6 was very close. Oklahoma was ranked number 4 because they're a one-loss conference champion with a dynamic offense, and their one loss was a close game to a ranked team at a neutral site. Georgia was ranked number 5 because their wins against highly ranked teams, their impressive performance against Alabama in the conference championship game, and because of how balanced a team they are. Ohio State was ranked number 6 because they're a one-loss conference champion with a big win over Michigan. The committee ranked them behind Georgia because the committee thinks highly of Georgia's body of work. We also think highly of Ohio State's body of work, but at times they have been inconsistent. We noted their only loss was to an unranked team. The committee also determined the pairings for the Peach and Fiesta Bowls. The pairings are based on what we view as the best matchup for our highest-ranked teams, while also taking into account a desire to avoid repeat appearances by the same teams at the same bowls. The Peach Bowl on December 29th will feature number 7 Michigan against number 10 Florida. On New Year's Day, we will have 3 bowl games. The Fiesta Bowl will feature number 8 UCF and number 11 LSU. The Rose Bowl game will be between number 9 Washington and number 6 Ohio State. And the Sugar Bowl will include number 15 Texas against number 5 Georgia. It's an honor for me to be the chairman of this group. I've been around a lot of people in college football, and I've got to say, this group is special. Committee members prepare hard, they work hard, and they take their jobs seriously. They're here because they love this game and want to give something back. I'm grateful to every one of them. Herb Duromedy, Jeff Bauer, and Bobby Johnson are our most recent graduates, and I want to particularly thank them for their efforts. It's been an honor working alongside of them. Thank you to all of you as well for your dedication and interest in our game. I'm happy to take your questions.
All right, we'll open it up for questions. Again, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. We'll start on the left in the middle.
David Wharton with the LA Times. Given that conference championships are a stated criterion, is there any consideration to the idea of once again having 2 teams from the same conference and freezing out a conference championship champion from elsewhere?
Yeah. Our task is simple: rank the best teams. And as you talk specifically about the semifinals, it's to rank the 4 best teams. And that's what we go about doing. We don't discuss conference. Conference affiliation is not a part of it. It is simply about ranking the 4 best teams.
We'll go back on the left in the second row.
Ryan Aber from the Oklahoman. Rob, you mentioned that there was little debate between Alabama, Clemson, and Notre Dame, and a lot of debate between 4, 5, and 6. Why was that as it relates to Notre Dame, especially given the fact that the teams behind it had played in a conference championship game?
Yeah, well, I mean, Notre Dame was a part of that discussion for a small piece, but there was rigorous debate around 4, 5, and 6. And when you look at the protocol, and obviously we put Notre Dame on the board, 12-0, impressive resume, wins against a ranked Michigan, Northwestern, and Syracuse. The committee felt they deserved the number 3 slot. And then we went about really, finding who that 4th team was going to be.
Okay, we'll go to the second row on the right.
Sure. This is my 3rd year on the committee. We make sure we want to get this right. So there's a lot of debates. I would say this, and maybe it's just because of recency, but it was as intense as any that I can recall. We were in the room, roughly 11 o'clock last night. We didn't leave the room until 1:30. We were back at it early this morning. Significant portion of last night's was about those 4 teams. And again, there was a difference of opinion. So there was, each combination was represented, and we vetted it very thoroughly. Decided to sleep on it, very little sleep on it. Come back in the morning, and we re-engaged in some of the same debate after people had some chance to reflect and think. But again, the first order of business was to determine if we thought one of those teams was unequivocally better. And there were some in the room who thought that one or others were unequivocally better. But at the end of the day, collectively, the committee voted that they weren't unequivocally better. Therefore, we went to the protocol.
All right, we're going to go to a question from a caller on the line. Go ahead with your question, Mike.
Yeah, Rob, what do you say to the players of UCF who finished unbeaten again, have won 25 straight, and aren't getting a sniff of the playoffs?
I'd say congratulations on a great season. Congratulations on a conference championship. Impressive second half against Memphis. Obviously, we spent some time talking about UCF. Again, another great year, a great opportunity to play an LSU team in the Fiesta Bowl. But in the committee's eyes, the strength of schedule just didn't hold up when you look at that peer group of 7 and 8.
All right, we'll go in the third row on the right.
Heather Dinich with ESPN. So a conference championship mattered enough to Oklahoma to rank them ahead of Georgia, but it didn't matter enough to Ohio State to rank them ahead of Georgia. So can you try and provide a little bit more clarity as to just what is the value of a conference championship game in this system?
Well, again, once we determined that, as we're talking about those three teams being Oklahoma, Georgia, and Ohio State, once we determined no one was unequivocally better, then we go to the protocol, and the protocol has several factors, and conference championship is one of them, and that's very important. When you look at the history of the playoff, look at the number of conference champions that are in the playoff. It's a large percentage, so it carries plenty of weight. But there's other factors, strength of schedule, et cetera, and as we went on in this debate, that conference championship was a key piece for Oklahoma, and it did make a bit of a difference. But those teams were so tightly, together. In the end, the committee thought that put Oklahoma at 4, Georgia at 5, given their strength of schedule with only a loss to a number 1 team and I think ultimately our number 11 team. Their body of work was pretty strong, and then Ohio State's inconsistencies, as I mentioned in my opening statement, put them at 6.
All right, we'll go back on the left, second row.
Jason Kersey with The Athletic. Rob, when you have Frank Beamer and Joe Castiglione, who are both have to recuse themselves for Oklahoma discussions, during a contentious debate between 3 teams, are they in the room for that, or when Oklahoma is mentioned, they leave?
They are, anytime Oklahoma is on the board, and even in this last weekend, we extend those recusals. If we're even talking about somebody that they could be matched up against, they're recused. So for all of this debate that I'm talking about, those 2 plus Gene Smith were recused from the room.
All right, we've got another question from a caller on the line. Go ahead, John.
Rob, thanks for the time. What would you say to a conference commissioner who seeks your advice on whether he should have a 9-game conference season or an 8-game conference season based on your experience with the selection process? Because it doesn't appear that only playing 8 conference games has in any way hurt those conferences.
Yeah, that's a local decision, and I'm sure that there's a lot of factors that go into that. So I really wouldn't, again, that's a local decision, and and strength of schedule is one piece of it. So I think they can look at the history and glean what they want from that.
All right, we'll go to the second row on the right, here in the room.
Rob, you mentioned the conference championship, obviously. But you're looking at Oklahoma's resume, just a 3-point loss to Texas, which they had a chance to avenge in the title game. On the other hand, you had the 29-point Ohio State loss, the 20-point Georgia loss to LSU. How big a factor was that in the debate? Did that come up? And how did the committee look at that?
Sure, we're looking at full resumes. So when you're doing the kind of debate that we're doing, and the importance of that debate for that number 4 piece, we're looking at every single game. And so, of course, when there aren't very many losses on the board, so we're looking at the wins, we're looking at the losses. And a 3-point loss to a ranked team on a neutral field is different than the only loss amongst that peer group to an unranked team. So, and obviously we did take note that Georgia's 2 losses were against the number 1 team in our rankings, and I believe what ultimately ended up being the number 11 team. So, sure, that was part of the discussion, but it was just one part of it.
We have another question on the call. Go ahead, Ari.
Hi, Rob. I was just wondering, on TV you said there was no clear-cut team that was up and above the best team on the start between Ohio State, Georgia, and Oklahoma. And you said you reverted back to the criteria and the protocol. When discussing those 3 teams, what in the criteria and the protocol supported Georgia being ranked ahead of Ohio State?
Again, we were looking at all 4 things. In that one, their strength of schedule was incredible. They have 2 losses, but to the number 1 team in the country and to the number 11 team. Again, it was very close and a lengthy debate about all 3 of those teams. And again, we're looking at full resumes. Georgia had a number of games against ranked teams. Ohio State had impressive wins as well. They probably had the most impressive win of the group with the win over Michigan. But again, they did have the only loss to an unranked team amongst that group.
Okay, we'll come back here in the room, third row on the right.
As one of the committee members, do you feel that the protocol helps you determine the top four teams? Does it give you what you need and put you in the best position to make those decisions? Or would you rather see conference championship games or something be weighted to help guide you a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the commissioners did an outstanding job when they thought about setting this up, and they were very thorough. Because again, this is an art, not a science. And I think the protocol gives very clear guidance, and that guidance, when you determine that teams are not unequivocally better, is very helpful. It certainly was very helpful today and last night, in my opinion.
We've got another question from a caller. Seth, go ahead, please.
Hey, Rob. There was a lot of debate over picking the four best teams versus the four deserving, as in four best, you should pick Georgia because they're clearly this good, et cetera, et cetera. Is there confusion over whether the charge is to pick the four best versus the four best resumes?
Our charge is very clear, to pick the four best teams. Before we start every meeting, every time we gather in Grapevine, Texas, we do review a piece of the protocol. We're very clear on the charge to get the four best teams. And obviously, reasonable minds can disagree on what that looks like. And that's why we have a protocol to make sure that we lean on when it's, when we have to make tough decisions.
All right, we'll go to the far side of the room on the left. Go ahead.
Yep, Rob. Oklahoma's defense has been the thing, obviously, holding them back, I think, the most this season. How much, when you're debating a contentious between three teams, does the fact that they played better the last couple of weeks, how much did that weigh in to helping them elevate into the fourth spot?
Well, it's certainly part of the conversation. I mean, again, we watch all the games. We're looking at every single result, and the fact that their defense had 2 touchdowns in their last game, and then had a key play in their last regular season game, and then had a key play yesterday. Sure, that's a piece of it, no doubt. But we're also looking at the results of all the other teams that they're up against as well.
Back on the left. Go ahead.
Rob, Brian Aber from the Oklahoman again. I understand you all were up here till 1:30 in the morning or so last night. When did you finally settle on the 4 teams? Was that last night before you broke, or today? Did that conversation go close to when y'all had to have it figured out?
Yeah, it went. I think it probably went up until 10:30ish this morning. So we went, till 1:30, debating, discussing. Decided that it was 1:30, and we had been going at it pretty good, and wanted to take some time away, reflect, and come back, and we started debate up early again this morning.
All right, we have time for a few more questions. If there's any others in the room here, please raise your hand and we will get a mic to you. We'll go back on the right, second row, please.
Rob, a couple times during the last couple of weeks, you've referred to Oklahoma as having a historic offense. And for a long time in football, the feeling was that defense wins championships. Has the thinking evolved, even since you've been on the committee, on how you evaluate teams with really, really big-time offenses there versus maybe the old school thinking of 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Again, I think that's the beauty of this setup, right? You have 13, diverse backgrounds with a different set of experiences and a different set of opinions. And when you can get those 13 passionate experts in a room with a system that supports rigorous, candid debate, you get the best results. So sure, that's part of the debate is, how do you evaluate a team that has a historic offense and maybe a defense that doesn't match that? And so, there's a lot of different ways to win football games. Our charge is to find the 4 best teams and debate who that is and why we think it's that way.
Okay, we'll go to the right. Go ahead, Heather.
As the conversation surrounded Georgia and there was support for that team within the room, was there anybody who voiced concern about just putting a 2-loss team in that didn't win its conference championship, and about what kind of a reaction that would get?
No, I mean, our job is to pick the 4 best teams. So it really wasn't about number of losses. Obviously, when you're looking at the resume, you can see that they've got 2 and others have 1. But again, their 2 losses are against highly ranked teams. It's really about trying to get the 4 best teams. The conference piece is out of it. That's really not a part of it. We're looking at, there were some people who felt they were the 4th best team. And, even some that felt they were unequivocally the 4th best team. But after all the dialogue, the debate, the intensity, you put it to a vote. And the vote, didn't have them as unequivocally, the 4th best team. In fact, it had them ranked number 5.
All right, we'll take one final question on the call. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Rob, back to the UCF discussion. What's it going to take, in your opinion, for a group of 5 team to break into this?
Yeah, I'm not going to project on that. Again, I think the protocol is pretty clear. When you look at how we're supposed to evaluate picking the 4 best teams, conference championships, one of them, strength of schedule is one of them, results against common opponents is one of them. So again, I would just point to the protocol. I think it's laid out pretty clear.
All right, we'll take our final question on the left. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rob, Florida at 10, Kentucky at 14, the same record, but Kentucky had beaten Florida head-to-head. What did you see as the gap between those 2?
Yeah, I mean, as you get late into the year, it gets difficult. There's a lot of, sometimes you have a lot of conflicting info. I think it was just, Florida's total body of work while they lost the head-to-head, their total body of work with, some impressive wins. I know Kentucky had some impressive wins as well, but I think it was just total body of work.
All right, Rob, thank you. That concludes
Thank you,
our
guys.
news conference. Again, transcripts will be available shortly on collegepressbox.com. If you'd like to speak with either Rob or Bill, we've got to get Rob upstairs for another commitment shortly, but Bill will be available in this room for interviews as well. Thank you.